Filthy Animals is an ecology podcast for adults. Episodes may contain strong language and graphic descriptions of natural phenomena. A more detailed content warning is included in the episode description.
Welcome to Filthy Animals, a sex, drugs, and ecology podcast where science educators, that's us, talk about the unusual adult activities of the natural world that we believe you need to know about. Every month we'll expose you to the latest research on all the filthy topics your high school science teacher was too embarrassed to talk about. Today, this week, we have myself, Rachel, and my two guests.
We're the guests?
We're your guests. You said it. Well, that was a fantastic intro, Rachel. I'm Alan, by the way.
Hi, Alan.
And I'm Nicole, and I'm actually leading this podcast episode.
That's true.
Yeah, Nicole. Thank you for that NPR quality audio, Rachel.
You're welcome.
I will.
And now back to you, Ira Glass.
Beautiful.
Oh, gosh.
Nicole, what do you have for us today?
I have something that I think will be fun. It's not going to be quite as raunchy as some of our other episodes, perhaps.
Perfect.
But it'll be fun.
I think it's important to be reminded about how dirty, really innocuous things in our lives are, but we're just afraid to talk about them in the terms that are truly appropriate for the situation.
Yeah, that's true. Like you sent me that TikTok of that dog that was going through the hedge and just pollen pouring out of it in heaps onto the sidewalk. And then you stop and think about, that's a sexual cell there. Yeah. That is what's happening.
Just jizzing all over the sidewalk.
Just loads of it dropping.
The plant, for the record.
Yeah.
Dog,
no.
Right. I don't know what the dog was doing, but the plant for sure was jizzing everywhere.
Yes.
Let's talk about different ways that plants get it on.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Cute. Okay.
Segue.
What a segue. Most plants, not all, but most plants in this wonderful world of ours need help reproducing.
Aw.
The pollen must be transferred to the stigma for the little baby plants to be born. And they just need a little help doing that.
What's a stigma?
The female part of the flower.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's a quick definition there.
Yep. I'm not looking into the different parts of the flower. It's a lot.
Yeah.
We've probably talked about it before also, so we don't need to rehash it. But if a plant is relying specifically on pollinators to help them get the deed done, they are usually pretty selective about who visits. It's better to be, in general, more selective, because if you rely only on bumblebees and bumblebees only rely on you, then they are visiting only that one type of flower. It's more likely that pollination is going to occur versus, having a generalist pollinator where they're visiting lots of different flowers and then there's lots of pollen going everywhere and it's not selective.
Gotcha.
So I wanted to talk about the different ways that plants are using their pollinators, tricking their pollinators, and sometimes straight up abusing the pollinators.
Oh, no. Toxic plant relationships?
No.
Stop. No.
Yes. It gets pretty wild. And
I was at first going to be like, good for you, plants. Know your worth.
Yeah.
Have standards. Be selective.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, now we're going to talk about how the plants are terrorizing these poor, naive insects.
Yeah.
Controlling abusive behaviors need to be stopped. This is a PSA for plants and insects or other pollinators. But there are plants that like don't rely on pollinators at all, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. There's plants that self-pollinate. There's plants that reproduce asexually. There's plants that rely on wind or water or all sorts of different ways of pollination.
Shout out to grasses.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
But we will be focusing on the ones that do require pollinators. All of my examples are bug related, but that's just my bias. There's plenty of other pollinators that exist. There's lizards, there's monkeys, there's I don't even know, so many different things.
That
little
dog,
shrews.
probably,
Yeah, that dog.
Yeah.
There's lots of different pollinators, but I just like bugs, so I focused on bug examples.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Good deal.
Yeah. And my first few examples are, again, coming from the wonderful book, What a Bee Knows. And I wanted to talk about some of the like very specialized flowers that exist, just to kind of get us into the headspace of like this really intricate dance that is happening like at all times around us. So one of my favorite examples are actually alfalfa blossoms. Ooh. So in pea plants in general, with that really like upright petal and then the side petals on the side that kind of like close the flower shut, they require very specific pollinators that are big and strong enough to kind of open up the blossom and access the nectar inside. And as they're accessing the nectar, they're accidentally getting pollen on them, moving to another alfalfa flower, so on and so forth. For the most part, pollination is accidental on like the pollinator side. So, but they're still getting a reward for it in this case. So the alfalfa blossom is very unique in that way. And they also, like if you look up a video of like honeybees, for example, visiting alfalfa blossoms, they are not big enough to access these flowers. And as they kind of attempt to, a lot of times like smaller bees, if they manage to get the flower open, the alfalfa blossom just like smacks them in the head with the anthers. And it's such a forceful smack that it'll send the bees flying out of the flower before they even get to the nectar.
Whoa.
That's especially hilarious when you consider the fact that the anthers are like the reproductive organ.
Yes.
So it's kind of like you're like, oh, hello there, may I have your poof? And then you get like whacked in the face by flower genitalia.
Yeah. Just get teabagged right out of there. Just
the harshest form of rejection. Yes.
Yep.
Aww.
Harsh. So, poor guys.
I just think that's hilarious that bees literally just get like flicked out of the flower by like, the reproductive bits of it.
That's impressive. Yeah.
I will say also that since smaller bees can't access the nectar through traditional means, honeybees in particular have been observed actually cutting in through the side of the flower and like literally cutting a hole in the flower and accessing the nectar from the side instead. So like honeybees are known to be very poor pollinators of alfalfa because they can't access it like the traditional way and get any pollen on them.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Aren't honeybees used for alfalfa pollination? Yeah, on a large scale, yes, but they're bad at it.
I was sitting here gaslighting myself. Like, that can't possibly be true because that would be incredibly stupid.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Okay. There are bumblebees that are used for these purposes. Like, why is this not? Oh, I'm just okay.
Honeybees are easier to find. They're cheaper. They last for several years. Whereas if you're buying bumblebee hives to pollinate your crops, that's, a purchase that you're making every year. So even if the pollination rate, I'm just making these numbers up, if it's 90% for bumblebees and 10% for honeybees, it's probably still a better investment just money-wise to just try to use honeybees. And you're going to naturally have bumbles and like more efficient pollinators coming to those flowers anyways.
But then the honeybees are getting all the credit.
I know. Tell me about it.
Terrible.
Absolutely terrible. Another really fun example of specifically bumblebees and some larger bodied bees being more efficient pollinators is through buzz pollination. And if you look up any videos about this, they're all extremely sexual.
Yeah.
Like, it's just...
The jokes write themselves, honestly.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's good stuff. But the flowers essentially hide their pollen in these like bulbous anthers that have holes on them, almost like a salt and pepper shaker. And the bees will bite down on the anthers and vibrate their wings 100 to 400 times a second. Just vibrate the crap out of these plant genitalia, which then explode pollen out of them. Like, it's not just that, it's shaking so it falls out. Like, the anthers are like actively like pushing out the pollen onto the bees. And again, this is done by bumbles, but there are a lot of other bees that incorporate buzz pollination into their feeding routines.
So what's the sexual part about that?
The pollen ejaculating all over the bees.
Do I need to use to vibrations?
Yeah.
I get it
specifically.
now.
Yeah, like they have to be vibrated to.
Yeah, I'm being.
Do I need to?
No, I get it.
Oh, okay.
I'm being because that is intensely sexual.
Yeah.
That was the joke.
Thanks.
I'll see myself out.
We're
No.
extremely dense.
No,
I'm trying to make sure, you know.
You never can be too sure. Yes.
But yeah, the videos on buzz pollination make me just giggle like a high schooler every time. It's so funny.
I like
so good
when they take a tuning fork and they use that to get the flowers off instead.
How does that go at like the same?
Yeah.
If you get the right tuning fork.
Yep.
Ooh, that's interesting. So, well, yeah, because there's like a very specific
Like
note.
frequency. Yeah. That they're reacting to.
You gotta hit.
That deep bumblebee buzz.
Yep.
Gotcha. And they're like, no, lower. There we go.
Yep.
That was my flower ejaculation noise. Sorry about that. Anyway.
It was perfect. Not to get like too into the weeds with the bee part of it, but something really, really cool that I did not know is that bumblebees or bees that use buzz pollination, like they are attracted to very specific smells that the flowers are giving off that like entice them into this buzz pollination behavior. And like the shape of the anthers, like once they see that shape, they're like, I know exactly what to do. And even naive bees that have never seen these types of flowers before, like most of them will start vibrating and like know what to do to get the pollen out, which is wild.
Oh,
Like it's not a learned behavior.
Wow.
They get better at it. Yeah, they get better at it over time, but it is an innate, behavior that they're just born with, knowing how to get plants off.
How? That's interesting.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, super cool. And so these kinds of relationships are pretty much beneficial for both the pollinator and the plant, but that is not always the case. And particularly when it comes to the orchid family, they are like the ultimate deceivers. We could probably do like 4 episodes just on orchids, but I'm going to try to condense them and make some generalizations about orchids. 1/4 to 1/3 of all orchid species do not produce any nectar at all.
Okay.
They just smell really good and entice pollinators in that way. And they are not giving any kind of reward when pollinators are visiting them.
Oh.
It's
interesting. What?
No, I was going to say, so they're like the pillow princess of flowers.
Yes.
Okay.
Is this related to the fact that some bee pheromones smell like flowers? Is that like the flowers are triggering that same pathway in the bees and drawing them in that way?
Yes, absolutely. A lot of orchids use chemicals that smell like a female bee. So they entice a male bee in to try to mate with them.
Oh my
And then
God.
they just, again, are smacking the bee in the head with their anthers.
How common is this among flowers?
It's extraordinarily common.
This is really
It's an aggressive pillow
really
princess.
aggressive.
It's a
Yeah.
lot. It's a lot, yeah.
Get out.
Well, with the orchid, it is unique. Orchids have little pollen packets that are like meant to break off onto the bee. So with like the alfalfa blossoms, they just kind of like smack them in the face a little bit and like the pollen falls off. And it's like a powder. But with the orchids, it's like a sticky packet that they're leaving on the bee's head or sometimes on their abdomens as well, depending on the type of bee.
Interesting. So they are really they are pollinating the bee.
Kind of, yeah.
They are like
yeah.
forcing that pollen, like
Yeah.
slapping it on them.
Yeah.
And it's like, get the hell out.
Yep.
You
Yeah.
fool.
Yep.
You idiot.
Yep. And then the bee's like, oh, that was weird. Oh, I have something sticky on my head. Oh, well. And then
Hey,
he goes
there's
to another orchid.
orchid.
Yeah. And he pollinates it.
Oh, well,
So-
I mean, Dang. I guess if it works, it works.
Yeah.
What is the bee? And the bee gets nothing out of this.
The bee gets nothing out of it a lot of the times.
Because they can't even like eat that pollen packet.
Nope.
And this is almost 1/3.
Almost 1/3 of
nearing
orchids.
1/3 of orchid species reproduce this way.
Yeah. Have no pollen. No nectar, sorry. There are ones that have nectar and they're still like incorporating similar strategies, like with the pollen packets and stuff like that. But a lot of them are literally giving nothing back to the pollinators at all.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Because like
and actively like keeping them from actually finding mates, and also like it's not uncommon to find like bee ejaculate on the flowers, so like they're wasting resources in that way too.
Yeah,
like it's actively harming the bee. It's not just wasting their time.
No,
necessarily.
it's weird. Yeah, it's
a lot of energy being wasted.
Yeah,
it's not a mutualistic thing.
Not at all.
So is this just sort of like a thing that bees have not evolved to recognize, or like do you think this is probably something that would like if they're wasting a ton of time doing this is eventually something that bees will evolve to be like, nope, that's not, no I know this. No.
Right. Yeah, you would think so. And it's all a very delicate dance. Like the orchids will change like the composition of their pheromones to like try to continue tricking the bees. The bees can notice like, oh, this is a flower, admittedly, that I've already mated with because like my scent is on it, or like the scent from the flower is less strong. So they won't keep going back to the same flower, but they'll go to the one like, a foot away because they don't know any different. So
embarrassing.
It's right. Yeah.
So why not invest in nectar production though, if you're an orchid?
Because nectar is very energetically expensive.
Right.
Nectar is, for most, if not all flowers, like the only reason a flower is going to produce nectar is to attract pollinators. That's the only reason.
For sure.
So if you can get away with not doing that and still getting pollinated, might as well.
How many orchids are, because there are like orchids that are also just like they're non-photosynthetic. Like they don't do anything. Like they don't, you know what I mean? Like they just like, they're also
very parasitic.
They're very parasitic. Is that a general attribute of orchids, or like it's a very diverse family, obviously, but like, is that something that orchids are kind of known for, is being this weird like sort of cheater plant, and like not being terribly mutualistic with?
Absolutely. Like if you look, there's so much studies on orchids, and like you said, it's a very diverse family, but there's a lot of studies on orchids, and like I said, we could do like 10 episodes just on orchids, like because they just do so many weird things. And it's not like there's some other stuff, but like focusing just on the chemicals, there's ways, I don't know, like the orchids are so good at using chemicals to trick these bees that like the bees actively prefer the scent of the orchid than like females of their own species.
Oh, that's bad.
Like this dupe
really
goes
bad.
deep.
That feels like it could have really intense consequences for the species. Like the orchids need to, chill out a little bit so that they don't completely decimate their pollinators they rely on.
Yeah, but at least it is the males that are suffering, because like they can mate multiple times. Is all I'm saying.
Wow,
all I'm
Nicole.
saying.
That's
They're
true.
capable of mating multiple times. So yeah.
Yes.
As far as species survival, if the males or the females have to suffer, the males are a better option. Sorry.
True, unless they spend that whole 2 weeks of adulthood just boning orchids.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, I've wasted my life. Then it's a problem.
Yeah.
Oh, why am I now picturing these bees like they're like gambling addicts, just getting kicked out of the casino with nothing left at the end of their life? Like, oh, I wasted it all on those damn orchids.
Yep.
That's okay, buddy.
In addition to the chemical duping that is happening with orchids, the shape, the color, and even the texture of the flowers often like look and feel like female bees.
Oh no.
So
really?
Yeah. There are, if you look up bee orchids in particular, like they look like female bees. Sometimes they'll even have little protrusions that look like antenna.
Oh my god.
And like like the petal that they want them to land on, that's the only one that's going to be like extra fuzzy so that it feels like a female's abdomen. And the orientation of the hairs on the petal actually encourage the bee to land at like a certain like direction to ensure that those pollen packets get bopped onto them. Insane.
This is such a weird dynamic.
Yeah.
Like
flowers like literally producing like bee sex dolls to get them in the correct position to trick them into carrying pollen.
Yeah.
And the flower is okay just like being used like a sex toy by a bee because
fine.
it gets to like
Yeah.
tag it.
Yep.
It's like done.
Yep.
What a weirdly it is. I guess, can we say that the bee doesn't get any reward out of that then? Like it is ultimately detrimental because they are not, you know, they're wasting their energy, their genetic material, whatever. Yeah. But
he thinks he did good.
Does he? Or does he have like that like post-nut clarity where he's like, oh man, that was an orchid, wasn't it?
Oh man, have these all been orchids today? Oh god, I'm covered in what? All right, can't do that again.
Yeah. Something else really weird about these bee orchids is that they even have the timing of their blooms specific to when the males are emerging. Because we've talked about this before, the males will emerge before the females. So the orchids spend most of their blooming time specifically when there's no female bees around, because that's when they're going to have the most success.
Oh my god.
Interesting.
But they're getting lots of practice. Maybe that is beneficial for them.
Yeah. They are. Is there any study? They're getting lots of practice. You can't deny that. Is there any study that shows like if a male bee tries to entice a female and he has like 18 different pollen packets stuck to his head, that the female's like, you know what, maybe you're not my best choice. Yeah. You know, maybe you're not as... There's got to be smarter bees out there.
Yeah, you know, I don't know if that's specifically been studied, but it's an interesting question.
All right, yeah.
Is it possible to have that many pollen packets though? Like, because here's like a legitimate question, right? Like, if there's already a pollen packet there, does that like reduce the chance of a new one being deposited on there?
I mean, probably. And ideally, they're going to another orchid and depositing that packet to the other orchid.
Oh, does it scrape the whole thing off? Because I was picturing the pollen packet staying on there so that it, like little bits of it could get rubbed off onto every.
I think it's a little bit of both. Okay. Like I said, they are very sticky, but like eventually you want that to fall off the bee. So yeah, but they're sticky enough that like if the bee tries to like groom it off, it usually can't. So
dang.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. Wild.
It's so cool. I love bee orchids. And keeping with orchids, I have one other one that I wanted to talk about. They're called green hood orchids. This is a genus, I think, of orchids that are a little bit more forceful with their pollen packet deliveries. Their flowers are shaped to snap up and close the pollinator like inside of the flower. Oh boy. So it's not just like bapping and like letting the bee leave. It like literally like grabs it and like shoves it down inside the main part of the flower. Yikes. Where the bee will like struggle, get a bunch of pollen all over it, and then eventually get out. So wild.
Kidnapping. It's just kidnapping. Yep. It's like the white unmarked van.
Yes.
Oh no.
And it happens super quick. There's some really cool videos of green hood orchids doing this. There's also some that act more like a seesaw and just flips the pollinator like down into like the bowl of the flower, and then again they fight their way out and pollinate on their way out. So absolutely wild.
That's amazing.
That is really impressive. Yeah. You know, why, don't wait for them to come to you. You pollinate, you give them the pollen. Yeah.
Yeah. Just put them in a little Ziploc bag and shake them up with the pollen.
Basically, Come here. And there's a lot of plants that will use like this pollinator kidnapping technique. Pegia, is a well-known genus of plants that like almost every plant in this genus basically kidnaps insects. Sometimes it's overnight, sometimes it's very temporary. Ceropegia ampliata, also known as the condom plant or horny wonder.
The horny wonder.
Horny wonder is one example.
Why the condom plant?
Wow.
What were you going to say?
No, I'm speechless, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
What a thing to be known as.
Mm-hmm. It
of all the things in nature to be known as the horny wonder.
Yeah. It's a lot.
Is this one of those ones that like jails the bee over or a fly overnight or something? And
it's I'll just tell you. Okay. It's very phallic shaped, hence the condom plant. Okay. And it has these like 4 protrusions on like the tip of the flower, hence the horny wonder part of the name. And
like horny, like a horny toad.
Yeah, not like that. Not horny as in, I know.
Well, that is disappointing.
What if it's a double entendre?
I mean, for sure. It's very phallic. Like, it's a lot.
I'm just saying the scientists know what they were doing, even if they're going to pretend like they're, I didn't intend for that. And you did.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Absolutely.
You sturdy scientists. Okay, so yes.
Yes. So the pollinator, I think it's mostly flies for this particular plant, will fly down and kind of be enticed by the sweet smelling nectar and other rewards that are being promised to it. And as they work their way down inside of the flower, there are stiff, backwards pointing hairs that make it so that the insect cannot back up out of the flower. So they just have to keep going down deeper and deeper and deeper until they reach the reproductive bits and pollinate it for it. So
there's no going back.
No going back. Yeah.
That's very claustrophobic and frightening.
Yep.
Yes. So how do they get out eventually? Or do they just
I don't think they do.
They just die. Well, then what's the point of pollinating
What do you mean?
them?
The insect doesn't need, so like there's male and female flowers down inside of the horny wonder.
It's not a Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So
Yeah.
it
So it is
only
still like a
self-pollinates?
perfect flower, but they're like they just need a fly. They want to just bring a fly into the situation to jostle things around.
Yeah, jostle things around a little bit. I'm sure that some pollinators do escape. But we'll talk about one later that like it's not so true. But yeah, like I said, this is a very common phenomena. Like you mentioned, like holding insects overnight. The giant Amazon water lily is a plant that does this. It attracts scarab beetles in particular to its beautiful bright white flowers at night. And then those flowers will just close up on the beetle when the sun rises. The beetle struggles all day long, getting pollen all over it. And then the flower during the day is male and has pollen.
Okay.
It also changes to pink. At night, it will turn back into a white flower and they become female again.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there's a lot going on with this flower, but essentially, the beetle is trapped during the day, getting pollen all over it. All of the beetles are then released at night to then pollinate the now all female flowers.
But there are okay, you have a flower like this, it could or like the condom plant could already conceivably be self-pollinating because you have the male and the female parts of the flower in such close proximity to each other, and they're very closed off already. Yeah. So like what is the advantage then of involving these insects? Because it seems like that, if anything, lowers your potential success as opposed to just pollinating yourself.
Yeah. You get that genetic diversity by using, nearby flowers, which, in general is going to up your fitness. Sure. You can only self-pollinate for so long before, at least for a lot of plants, it becomes an issue. Yeah. Some plants are just clonal and they do fine, and that's not an issue at all. Yes. But for the most part, if you have some outcrossing, that is better. Okay.
Yeah. So that makes sense for the one where it's releasing the pollen-covered flies, but when they're just dying inside the flower.
Holding on to them, yeah.
I don't know, man.
Fascinating.
Plants are weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, is that just like, I mean, it's because it's not a it's not a reproductive need to have the insect there.
Sure.
It's a reproductive
But
want.
it can be sometimes. Like if the pollen is encapsulated somehow, like with the salt shaker, examples, like they do need to be agitated for that pollen to be released.
Sure. Is that the case with the condom plant?
I'm not 100% sure.
Seems like they just want to bring an insect in for
Just
their
for
own sick
shits
design.
and giggles. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it would be, I mean, that's the definition of a kink, I believe, is a sexual want, not a sexual need.
Yeah, fair.
So there you go.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think it's also important to point out here, feels like the same thing as buzz pollination for some of these examples, but it's more like struggle pollination. Like, I just want to watch you struggle around in there. Like, that's the only thing that's going to get me up, is you fighting for your life in the pit of my flower parts.
Yep.
Ooh,
Yeah.
Yikes.
flowers are not as nice as I thought they were.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should dive even darker?
Yes. Tell us.
It gets
Tell
worse.
us.
Yeah, it
Tell
gets
us.
Oh, no.
I mean, other than the horny wonder,
Yes.
most of these, they're
It's
just
so
kind of
funny.
wasting. I know it's a lot. They're just kind of wasting the pollinator's time. They're not harming its reproductive output. They're not harming its like overall life cycle. But there are plants that do that.
Okay.
One example is another orchid. Hoverfly pollinated orchids are very unique. So hoverflies, at least this particular hoverfly, prey on aphids in its larval stage. So ideally, hoverfly finds a plant infested with aphids, lays a bunch of eggs hatch, they eat all the aphids. Happy fly, happy life, However, the orchid actively emits chemicals that smell like aphids in distress.
Oh.
Okay.
So this hoverfly comes by, assuming that this plant has an active aphid infestation, ends up pollinating the flowers and laying a bunch of eggs all over it. Even like inside of the flower is laying eggs, and the there's no aphids. This is a complete ruse on the orchid's part. So this hoverfly lays a bunch of eggs, its babies hatch, have nothing to eat, and they all die.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Baby killing orchid was not on my bingo card for this episode.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And the benefit of that to the plant is that it reduces...
Yeah.
I still don't get it.
So the benefit to the orchid is that it's attracting one specific pollinator. It's attracting these hoverflies.
Okay, while the hoverfly is laying its eggs, it is pollinating the orchid.
Yes, as it's laying its eggs, it is pollinating the orchid. Again, it's that, if I can be really specific about what pollinator I'm attracting, I have a higher pollination success rate. So there's that.
Sure.
The aphid distress signals that it's emitting also keeps aphids away, actual aphids away, because they assume something bad's happening here.
Right. It's like an alarm.
Yes.
So why does that attract the hoverfly? Wouldn't the hoverfly, if it's detecting those aphid stress compounds, wouldn't it be like, well, I guess the hoverfly's already hit this plant? Or does it not? Or does it just not care?
I guess it's just not thinking that far ahead. It's like this plant definitely has aphids on it because I hear the screams. Well, I smell the screams of aphids.
Okay.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there is also nectar involved. So the hoverfly is benefiting partially.
Sure.
But it's also losing, a generation of offspring. So,
Well, yeah.
Is the sweet treat worth it? I don't know. Probably not.
Probably not. No.
Yeah.
It's
Can they
like,
lay
I'll
milk?
buy you a drink and then I will erase your family from the face of the earth.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Do they can they lay multiple clutches of eggs though?
I'm sure that they probably do. I don't, because with flies in general, I think do lay a lot of eggs. But I mean, if they're visiting a lot of fake orchids,
Yeah.
But I mean, that's a good point. Like the reproductive capacity of the pollinators that they've co-evolved with has to be able to meet that burden, because otherwise they are
would die.
just destroying their own pollinators.
Yes, absolutely.
So like that, it's it's still way messed up, but it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, it has to be, has to work somehow.
Yeah. And the orchids probably aren't blooming the whole time that the hoverflies are around. So it's probably, you know, yeah, like you said, there has to be some kind of balance involved. But like, it's like these relationships are so complex, and it like, we always think, oh, like pollination, it's mutually beneficial and like so simple, but it's so not. Like there's so many different, like, I don't know, examples. Like it was really hard for me to pick out not a ridiculous amount of examples for this episode, because there's so many just wild pollination stories out there.
For sure.
That's very cool.
One that I had never heard of is the mouse plant. This is a little tiny plant with like pretty arrowhead shaped leaves. It's very low growing, and its flowers are very unique looking. They are like purpley brown on top and with like a bowl shaped bottom that's like whitish, almost clear. And they are fungus mimickers.
Oh, what?
So these plants are relying on fungus gnats to pollinate them. They smell like fungus. The gnats fly down inside the flower. You know, they actually find this really weird organ that's called an appendix. It doesn't act like our appendix. It's purely for plants used for like emitting pheromones. So these flies go down inside here, find this appendix that looks, smells, and feels like a fungus. It feels like the underside of the fungus that they normally use as a host for their babies. So this is another baby killing plant. The gnats lay a bunch of eggs in here. Sometimes they'll have sex inside of these flowers. The babies hatch and they all die because they don't have anything to eat.
Oh my God.
The mimicry is really,
it's
It's
intense.
impressive. It's tedious, yeah.
And it goes like even farther, like the trickery. So I mentioned the bottom part of the flower is white and like kind of see-through a little bit. So the flies, like if you think of like a mushroom cap, the flies would fly downwards to get off of the mushroom because that's where the light is, right?
Sure.
So the bottom of this plant is white. It allows light in and it makes the flies fly downwards. And the female parts of the flowers are down at the base of this flower. So they are rubbing around, having sex, laying eggs, having this party, getting pollen all over them, and then flying to the bottom of the flower where the female parts are.
Again, it's so interesting to involve the flies when they like theoretically could just drop the pollen down into their own bowl, but like nope, they have this really complicated system going on.
Yeah. And again, there is outcrossing that happens. The flies are going to leave and still be covered in pollen. Eventually, they figure out how to leave and go to another flower, have another sex party, and are still pollinating. So.
There is an exchange of like of genetic information between the flowers. In most cases, sometimes there's not. For whatever reason.
Yeah. Does the pet trade know about, or not the pet trade, the what am I trying to say? Does the houseplant industry know about this? Because fungus gnats are like a menace, and like wouldn't people be breeding the hell out of these to market to people with fungus gnat problems?
You would think, and honestly, I don't know. So the condom plant is a common houseplant.
Is it for real?
It is,
Wait, what?
But I don't know that the mouse plant is. I want to say that it's a fairly rare flower, and it's very inconspicuous. I mean, I guess if you're using it for gnat control, it's probably worth it to have like a kind of weird looking flower around.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't know.
I mean, there's definitely people who get things just because they have weird flowers because that's the type of plant collector they are. What is there a different name that the condom plant goes by? Because I cannot imagine that being the name
Horny
on the tag.
Wonder, condom plant. I think there was one that was like slightly less funny, but I didn't write it down because it was less funny. So.
Bushman's pipe?
Yeah, there we go. Bushman's pipe. Yeah.
This is an aggressively phallic plant.
I know.
It's got a head. It's got a little ball sack. It's like...
It's a lot.
Oh, it is. That is just a penis.
Yeah, that's just yep.
Some weird tendrils on the
There's
top.
a droopy one.
It looks like if you carved a leek into a penis.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Fascinating.
Yeah. It's absolutely wild. Like, why are there so many plants that just look like penises? Yeah.
It's a useful shape, I guess.
I guess.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. Gosh. I have 3 more examples of the horrible things that plants do to their pollinators.
Okay.
Because, why go after the children when you can just go after the adult?
Okay.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, just 2 more examples. My bad. The first one is actually milkweeds.
Oh no.
So it's not very common. This is an accidental death. They're not doing it on purpose. But, even though at first glance milkweed flowers seem fairly simple and like it's just like a cluster of flowers all together, they're pretty, they smell nice even to humans, like they're very aromatic. They are very, very complex flowers. The petals on top are actually slightly slippery, and that can cause pollinators to kind of slip down into this part of the flower called a stigmatic slit. So we have a lot of penises. This one is very vaginal.
Cool.
It even has a spot that straight up looks like a clit.
Nice.
It's incredible. But this little black dot, the clit of the plant, will snap off, unfortunately, onto the leg of the insect and be carried away. So it's a lot like the pollen packets that orchids have. They're much smaller and are on kind of like these weird like arms. Unlike the orchids, they don't have like arms that get carried away, but the milkweeds do. And essentially they're relying on the insect first falling down into the vagina of the plant, ripping off the clit, and then going to another flower and falling down that flower's vagina to be able to complete pollination. Like it's very coincidental and like just a weird way to pollinate. Like pollination rates are not super high in milkweeds, but they have so many flowers that like, it's fine.
Eventually it'll get
eventually it'll work, because not only like if the, right front leg of an insect falls down into this slit, then the same right front leg has to then fall down into another slit on a different plant. Like there's a lot of barriers to entry.
Wait, so it's not the entire insect falling in. It's like
it's literally
a
a leg
slipping. So it's like accidental fisting this flower.
Yes.
And it has to use the same, but it has like 6 arms as an option. So it's like hopefully I trick this really slippery insect into fisting me with the same limb that it did it to some other flower.
Yep, absolutely.
There are few worse sexual encounters than the accidental fisting, I would imagine. Okay.
Yeah, pretty rare. Rare.
Oh no.
So it is relying just on, because there's a lot of like, are we talking about a specific milkweed, or like is this?
It's a lot. I mean, if not all milkweeds,
okay.
it's pretty common in the family overall, or genus overall.
So like there are so many different, like drastically different kinds of insects that use milkweeds as host plants. Yes. So like it's relying on just slipping in there.
Yeah.
Like it's not like a butterfly like proboscis that like probes there.
That can sometimes happen as well. So it's described as like any appendage that happens to fall in there, could possibly get this little pollen packet on it.
Cool.
It's
so if a butterfly gives it oral, that'll also work.
Yeah, sometimes.
Gotta.
Yeah. It's better if it's a foot because like they have the little claw foot, But yeah.
We really do need to there should be a lot of content warnings on this episode. I was not expecting this to be somehow so much dirtier than
plants are a lot
than any episode about like mammals, for example. But
yeah.
Wild. Okay.
Yeah, it's so funny to me that it's not very successful and that pollination rates are so low.
Yeah. And
it's a very weird ask,
it's a lot. Yeah.
Like you're not going to find a lot of insects that are into that.
It also has to be a pollinator that is strong enough to escape out of the slit.
Oh no.
So like,
hang on.
Again, honeybees, it's kind of common to see honeybees just dead on a milkweed because it gets its foot stuck in one of these slits and can't get back out.
It's like a bear trap for a honeybee.
Milkweeds are doing the best work.
That's true. Yeah, you can't fault them for that.
Yeah.
Oh my
like,
god.
I have personally seen honeybees trapped on showy milkweed and common milkweed both. So.
And it's generally the stigmatic slit, huh?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Wild.
Yep.
That's so funny, Nicole. It's so good.
It is very funny that honeybees are like not.
Yeah. They're just not strong enough.
They're not prepared.
Yeah.
For the flowers of North America.
Yep. Sometimes they'll also just like rip their leg off trying to get away.
Oh my god.
The native flowers of North America are just, you know, teabagging and trapping. Yeah, it's wild.
Yep.
Okay, this is a fun. Yeah.
Weird question. If a honeybee does leave a leg in there, can the flower like digest it or anything like that?
Not that I know of. That'd be cool.
Okay.
Though.
Yeah, just that would be an extra fun thing. But you know, it's already very fun. So
There are like some plants that
yeah.
effectively do that, like a fig, right? Like that basically digests the wasp. That
for sure. Yeah.
pollinates it. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so milkweeds keep on keeping on. I love you. The very last plant I wanted to talk about is one that is known to actively kill its pollinator.
Oh.
So this plant is the jack in the pulpit, which again, common ornamental plant. Like that is something you can just have in your yard right now and maybe you just don't even know it. Like pretty common. They're traps, so they trap the pollinator like a lot of these other plants that we were talking about, but their trap is just a little too good. They also rely on fungus gnats. And the fungus gnats, once they are within the flower, it is extremely rare for them to be able to find their way back out. However, there was a paper published recently, like within the last 2 years, that found that it is at least it was just one paper, so they don't know how common this is, but they found that the fungus gnats, even though the adults die within the flower, they will actually use this plant as a nursery effectively.
What?
So the females that are attracted to this plant will lay her eggs within the plant, and the babies will emerge unharmed within a couple weeks after the flower wilts and dies. So
life finds a way.
Yeah.
Right. But they thank you.
You're welcome.
But they, again, I just want to make sure I'm getting the series of events right here. Fungus gnat visits this flower.
Yes.
Do they visit multiple jacks in the
No.
Jacks in the pulpit? Jack in the pulpits? Jacks in the pulpit.
That sounds right, yeah.
Jack in the pulpit.
No, Jack's
singular
in the pulpit.
Jacks in the pulpit. Visit multiple of those, and then eventually find one that they're like, I'm going to use this as like as a habitat.
I mean, honestly,
as like a host plant.
A little bit unclear, but once the gnats enter, like they usually don't leave. So it's possible that the gnat is somehow figuring out like this flower is about to wilt.
Okay.
And so it's safe for me to enter and lay my eggs in here and use it as a nursery. That is possible. I don't know. And I don't think that there's been any research on that either. But like it's extremely, extremely rare for gnats to ever leave once they're within the plant.
So then how is that effective pollination? Again, I don't get it, Nicole.
It's weird,
These
man.
plants are just, what are they doing out there?
They're killing their pollinators, yeah.
Ooh, they're monsters.
Yeah. It's weird.
Would a monster release all the babies unharmed sometimes?
That's true.
Sometimes,
there's worse plants.
Yeah, it's really bizarre. I had heard of Jack in the Pulpit trapping its pollinators because it's, again, like to kill your pollinators most of the time does not seem like an effective way to undergo pollination.
No.
But for the Jack in the Pulpit, it works.
That is so
interesting.
strange.
Yeah.
I mean, it gives more credence to how complex the coevolution of plant pollinator relationships and host plant relationships are. So bizarre. We have like, it's just one of those ecological things where we haven't really scratched the surface of how complicated it is.
Yeah, it seems simple, but it's definitely not.
Wild.
Yeah.
Doesn't a Jack in the Pulpit have like it has a very unique flower, right? It's like a 1-petal flower or 2-petal flower or something. It's like really unusual for that
really
structure.
Weird.
Also, yeah.
Weird. Very weird. I don't know that I've seen the flower, unless like the sort of Venus flytrap looking leaf is the flower, but the flower I imagine is inside there somewhere. Okay. Well, cut that out.
No, I don't.
I don't remember. It's been a minute since I looked at an actual picture.
We're gonna look at a picture now, and we're gonna decide, and then we're gonna respond to your question, Rachel.
Okay.
Oh God, that's a bunch of condom plants. Okay.
Wait, no, I think that is the flower because the leaf. It's not a modified leaf, I don't think.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing. Like all the modified leaves involved, it's a lot.
Yeah, no, yeah. Okay, right. I think this is technically, I think they count this as like a single petal flower.
Yeah.
I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. What's a spadix? I don't know any of these flower terms, but this is a really helpful markup of what is going on.
Spadix and the spotty? Spattle?
Spattle? Spatty?
Fun.
I don't know. Anyway, that looks reproductive in nature.
It sure does.
How is it like it looks like it'd be really easy to find your way out of there.
It does. If you're not a stupid fungus gnat, I could find my way out of that flower.
Oh my gosh.
You just go up. You got wings. Just go up.
But there's a hood there.
1 second.
Well,
Sorry.
yeah, it's like, oh.
Everything got really loud and I don't know why.
Oh.
And like staticky.
Uh-oh.
Fantastic. I'm trying to think of the last thing we said before it got weird. Probably wasn't important.
I was bragging about how I could easily find my way out of a Jack in the Pulpit.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
We were just like looking at flower pics.
Yeah.
Yep.
Looking at dick pics, but flowers.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah. I don't know why it works for the Jack in the Pulpit, why killing its pollinator is effective for it, but it sure is.
Cool.
One of life's greatest mysteries. But like they are specifically called out for being like the only plant that like kills almost 100% of its pollinators. So like we talked about like some of these other plants where they kill their young, or like, you know, a bee gets trapped in a milkweed flower. Like it's fairly rare for those things to happen.
Sure.
Other than the killing the young part, because there's nothing to eat. But anyways, those are like incidental. The Jack in the Pulpit seems to be like actively trying to kill its pollinators. So it's different in that way.
So weird.
But it works.
We assumed there was some balance, but perhaps not.
Yeah.
What if,
Yeah.
okay, our Jacks in the Pulpit, like they have that, like they have a structure that comes up out of their cup and is like covered with the hood, right? Mm-hmm. What if that's just being like wind pollinated, and then they just kill fungus gnats because they like it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe.
it's like,
and they're just so abundant that they don't put a dent in the population, and so it all works out.
yeah, it's like that's their hobby.
Yeah. Amazing. Another good plant for people that have fungus gnat problems, perhaps.
I guess, except it lets the babies go, right?
Oh yeah, true. Never mind.
Oh shoot, so close.
Terrible.
Just when the flower withers, throw it away
Yeah, there you go.
outside.
There you go.
Perfect.
Done.
We solved fungus gnat problems forever.
It's gonna be so easy.
Yep.
Oh,
Just get another plant to flower consistently.
Yep.
Never an issue for any houseplant person.
Womp.
But yeah, plants are weird, magical things. They mimic the smell, the look, and even the feel of enticing rewards for pollinators, and use their hunger and their lust against them. And I just think that's beautiful in a way.
Oh yeah. Hey, you know, it's yeah.
When animals have desires, you just have to exploit them sometimes.
Yeah. Sometimes you offer
Dang.
nectar and rewards. Sometimes you just kill their offspring.
Yeah, that's I mean, that's a broad continuum of potential outcomes there.
Yeah, it is.
Could get a little snack, could be killed, could have all of my children killed.
Yeah.
Fine.
But it smells so good.
Still worth it.
The line ends here, buddies. But it was all worth it.
Yeah. Wow.
Wow.
What a violent, horny thing nature is.
Yeah.
Yeah. A horny wonder.
A horny wonder. Oh. Well, Nicole, that was sickening and fascinating. Thank you for sharing all
Yeah,
of
you're
that.
so welcome.
I would like to tell you an outro now. I hope you have your...
Wait. Give us your best NPR voice.
Oh, God. I'm trying to think of what men on NPR sound like.
Silky smooth.
Okay.
I wouldn't say that.
Sometimes.
Okay.
The jazz station for sure.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Filthy Animals. This podcast is produced by Grassland Groupies, dedicated to spreading scientific literacy in the interest of preserving our favorite natural resources on this filthy planet. Send us fan mail to 4925 South Broadway.
Number 69.
Yes, number 69. Wichita, Kansas, 67216. Other social media and contact info is in the notes. Nicole, could you give us a happy sunshine flower fact to take us out with a bit of brain bleach? Perhaps pick any flower that doesn't murder the insects that perpetuate its existence. She can't think of one. Well, this has been Filthy Animals.
I mean, well, okay. My first thought was like, yucca moths have a beautiful relationship with yuccas. They rely on each other exclusively, and the yucca actually actively pollinates on purpose the yucca plant and uses it as a nursery for its young.
Oh.
There you have it. Love is real after all.
Oh.
For the
I
yucca
believe.
moths only.
Very nice, Nicole.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Mwah.
Here's our theme song.
Just,
Animals.
Animals.